hear us now?
This looks so official.
Look at that. You got actual
I
things.
do. I have it all.
This is like a real.
all over the
What
place.
happens if your bubbler spills?
Can you
It won't.
see?
All right. Well, welcome to Lunchtime Live. It's our episode 2 of our Lunchtime Live. What was
Kind
the face
of.
for? Because we have Bill's singing.
Restart, yeah.
I think I like Bill singing. We can have it in there.
Can
Added.
we talk about how this is actually Lunchtime Live 3?
This technically is Lunchtime Live 3, but I don't know if we have to talk about that because it was like one button that didn't get pushed last time to get it recorded.
Our second one was really just practice.
It was practice, but we're not even talking about that topic. We're going to talk about a different topic today. So,
That's true.
Yeah.
So, okay. Can I set this up? Or you want to set this up?
Before we do, I want to, we're going to do some introductions. There we go. We're not going to start over. I don't know. Why do people want to start over? This is podcast. This is what we do.
That's right.
Okay, here we go. All right. Again, welcome to Lunchtime Live. I don't know why we needed to start over, but we did. So this is technically Lunchtime Live 4 now. I gave you 3.
That's right.
That's 4.
It's 4. But really, it's 2 for the listener.
Really, it's 2. This is Lunchtime Live, episode 2. Welcome. We are glad you are listening. Today, we have a special person, really awesome person here.
Special guest.
Special guest. You want to introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. This is Morgan Mosley. I'm the worship director here at St. Paul's.
Morgan, can we talk about why you introduced yourself as that you do?
I'm also a mother and a daughter and a friend and a sister
And a child of God.
and a child of God.
Hey, why aren't we special?
I don't know.
Just because we're here every
I've
week?
never been special.
Anyways, what's our topic today, Kelly?
Our topic today, do you want to share, Bill?
I do.
You look like you want to share.
I do.
So go ahead.
I want to talk about serving. That's right, serving. And more specifically, I want to talk about the difference between relationship-based ministry and event-based ministry. And that sounds pretty technical, but really, relationship-based ministry is just loving people. There are a couple different thought processes of like, how do we do ministry? How do we love people well? How do we tell people about Jesus? Some folks would say, hey, let's go door to door and let's interact with as many people as we can. And there are some people that would say that let's get as many people to our events as we possibly can and we'll interact with them once. But today I was hoping we could talk about the benefits of being in relationship with people and serving them through relationships. God has put us in the relationships that we have. So he's given us neighbors, he's given us coworkers, he has given us aunts and uncles and family members, and God has given us those relationships for a reason, and he invites us into using those relationships to further his kingdom. And so I just want to talk about what does that look like as a church? How do we leverage the relationships that God has given us to further his kingdom?
Well, a part of me wonders too, just kind of, can you use one without the other? Like you talked about like the big events or the relational kind of ministry. Like if you don't have the relational type ministry and yet you have big events, you're missing out. And I would say in the same vein, if you don't have some events to bring people here, how do you then get the relational?
Well, wouldn't it still be by relationship that the word is getting out? It would be because a person talked within their sphere of influence of people to say, look at what God is doing, a personal testimony that then impacted a life, that then brought them into that experience of saying, yeah, I want to know more about God. And so then that grows that. And So, I mean, it really goes back to the model of what we saw in scripture. They didn't have big events. Big events happened because they were sharing about it. So somebody wanted to come and hear that good news, the gospel preached by the disciples sharing, by the church sharing, that then it became a big event.
So to push back on the other side, which I can't believe I'm doing this because I'm the relational ministry guy. Actually, they did use a big event. It's called Pentecost. So the day of Pentecost was a big celebration that brought all kinds of people.
But it started by in the upper room.
Hold on.
A small group.
Hold on. It came. So all these people were here. Now they didn't, host the event, right? But they did utilize the gathering of people, and God utilized that through them, right? Of that. And so there is, I think, space for, right, those gatherings of people, and how do we utilize that? I think, though, the important piece is, how do you have the mindset of relational ministry in those? Because I think if you don't have that mindset of relational ministry, you lose the opportunity to have it. If you're just having people coming in and you're not really caring about being intentional about trying to form connections and relationship with people while they're here, well, then how are you ever going to continue to follow up with them? Or how is that going to have them be here, right? You're just hoping for them to show up again, maybe some other time. But I think that's where kind of both of those together, right, is an important thing. The view of relational ministry and the importance of relationship, of this thing that God gives us, right? That is the heart of ministry, is about relationships. That is an important thing, even as you do some of those other things.
For the listeners, I think we should take a step back, because I don't know that I did a great job of explaining at the very beginning. I want to just paint 3 different pictures of doing ministry. Okay, so just a few years ago, I took our youth group to this big event called Winter Jam. And Winter Jam is a bunch of concerts, people coming in, they sing a whole bunch of great music, the kids have a blast. And then there's this guy that stands up and shares the gospel message and invites people to follow after Jesus. Now, there's some stuff theologically that I'm like, I don't know, but it is an opportunity for the kids to hear about Jesus. That is a big event. And the guy that is talking to our youth have no relationship. He doesn't have a relationship with our youth, but he is speaking the gospel to them. Just this last week, another example, just this last week, I had 2 fellas from the Church of Latter-day Saints come and knock on my door. Got to have a great conversation with them. But again, there is no relationship there. Kind of a cold call kind of action. The third picture of ministry, and I don't mean to demonize the other two, but I know what I prefer, but the other type of ministry, we take our youth to the nursing home every other week. And these kids go from room to room, have conversations with the older folks there, and they build relationships with these people. And they build pretty close relationships, so much so that when one of the residents last year passed away, they went to the funeral because they loved Rosemary just as much as she loved them. And it was a special relationship. And there are good things that happen in each of those kinds of relationships, whether it's cold calling, going door to door, whether it's a big event where someone speaks the gospel to a lot of people, and whether it's 3 friends getting together at the nursing home and talking with each other about Jesus. Those all have specific benefits. But I think there are some, can we talk through what are the benefits and what do you guys see as a beneficial thing of a larger event?
Well, I was going to say, even with your three concepts. So, like you said, you didn't want to demonize the first 2, but the third one, though it is a beautiful thing, how other than, other organizations that you're going to, if it be a homeless shelter or be a retirement center or whatever it is, how are we reaching those that are not a part of those kinds of things to get them in, so then you can have those relational type ministries with them? I think that's where I think the benefit I can see in a larger event or, something like that. Though in the same vein, I think you run into those times of these events that, though they're all well and good, but like Winter Jam, you're not really getting lost. You're getting people that are already in church. They're already in these events that are coming in for that one thing because it's just Christian music being played and the whole thing. And so, yeah, it's cool. We go to it, but how does it benefit you in the long run? And I mean, I loved Winter Jam growing up, but I'm like, those type things, like how are we reaching the lost through any of those to get them in to then have those relationships?
So I actually think we're asking the wrong question. And I think we need to back it up because first off, even those scenarios, none of those were bad.
No.
And all of them were pointing to Jesus. And so, of course, it is a yes and. There is not a one without the other. It is, all of this is community. All of this is furthering the gospel. But then I think it's about our posture at each of them. In that, how at the big events are we being fruitful from that, as well as how in the intentionality of a relationship building moment are we being fruitful? Is that becoming fruitful for the Lord? And so even in that, I think it is more of this question of how do we continue a relational ministry and gospel-focused ministry through each of those situations and scenarios so that, as the word says, his word doesn't return void. What is going to be more that, so if it's a big event and the gospel is preached and somebody that has been lost is now found, they come to accept the Lord, how are we providing avenues for them to then dive into community and have a relational connection rather than just we spend all of our time putting on this one great event and then it's done after that. There's no follow up or follow through. And I think the same with the intentionality of the relationship is that just like the youth is going and connecting with the older generation, it's also they can't do that for everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like it takes everyone activated in relationship to reach everyone. No one person or group of people, the youth can't go to this home and then over here and then this ministry and that ministry and all this. I mean, it's like that would take every hour of every day for them to do that. And so then I think it goes back to the church is built by, intentional relational communities, then coming together as the church, worshiping together, celebrating what's happening in that community and that group. And so you see it as a yes and. You have to have the intentional relationship building, but then you also have the big event that happens. And I think it's about our posture and what we do after that to allow each piece to be fruitful. Because you can have relational ministry and still not see fruit if you're not being intentional and following through. And if you're just doing it because it's to check the box that I talked to 5 people today, or whatever. So I think that's kind of really, rather than pinning each of these things against each other, like, oh, should we have big events or should we have relational ministry? I think it's more about how do we change a culture to realizing, hey, it's more than any of these surface things. It's more than just, oh, here's relational ministry and here's the big events. And it's saying, how do we continue in this? How do we do life in this, in having fruitful encounters with one another in community, in ministry, in all of it?
Well, I think that brings it back to the question, or to the statement of that God has placed us in the midst of relationships. and that he invites us into leveraging those relationships for his glory and for his fame.
I do think, I mean, I like some of the things you said, Morgan, of that idea of an intentional relational community, right? And I think that is a huge piece of that. And I think, like you talked about it as the posture, and that for me is the idea of, do we have that intentionality of seeing that all that we're doing is about people, right? It is that relational aspect in all of it, even when we do the big events. And I think that's the piece. I have a thing on my wall in my office. It's across from me that says that ministry isn't tasks to be done, but it's, relationships to be cultivated. Because I need that reminder, because a lot of times it's easy to get focused on the tasks. And it's easy when you go to big events to get focused on just the excitement and the making it all this big event, and we miss the idea of seeing people in the midst of that. And I think sometimes we can miss the opportunities like you're talking about, Bill, of just in everyday life, right? I think where we miss the opportunities that God gives us to impact the people around us that we already have relationships with, right? That we're already interacting with. The idea that God has placed those people there in our lives on purpose. And we have a call in that to influence them and to impact them, care for them, and to help them experience Jesus' love through our actions, but also through our words and the doors he gives us to share about who he is in those places.
So I think too, one of my thoughts when you were talking, Morgan, to what I was thinking was, I think, it is very much yes and, because you can't get away from that, because I think if we are to emulate Christ as we are called to do, he did the same thing. He had massive times that there were 5,000 plus people that were there and he was talking to them, but then he also had the very intentional, very relational relationships with the disciples and those things. So everybody looked like they had something to say. Go ahead.
I'll jump in here just for a moment.
Whoa. Pastor Rob, where did you come from?
I know I'm late into the conversation, but I will say something here. So, as many people know, I used to do martial arts and karate. And one of the key things that, as I was an instructor for jiu-jitsu and karate, was we had a mantra that we would say, people won't listen to you until first they know that you can. And so I think that mantra is really where we are as a culture today, is that, there's this idea that all you have to do is evangelism. And yes, that, we do need to do evangelism, but we also have to let this community know that we care about them, that it's not one or the other, it's actually both. And that once the community or individuals know that we care, then suddenly what we have to say and the gospel that we share means so much more. And it opens their ears more to be able to listen to what we have to say. And so I think that's why, there's this disconnect with some individuals thinking all we have to do is do evangelism. Yes, but we also have to let people know we care. And really, the church is really who should be caring for people in this community. What we've tended to do is turn that over to the government, and that's part of the problem right now, is the church is not playing the role of the church that it's called to play, which is truly to care for the community, care for those who need to be cared for, not just within our church body, but within the community. And as we do that, as people see that we truly do love 217, as we say, as one of our values, then they'll start listening to us more on the message that we have to give. And so I believe that that's such an important thing when we talk about relationship. It is about building that relationship of trust and care and knowing that we love them, so that then the words that we speak mean even more to them and the gospel can grasp hold even more. So that's just the one thing I would chime in and say. And yes, big events are important because that's how we share in this life together. But we also need to have those individual moments where we're speaking to that one we want to share the gospel with and build that relationship with.
So I do want to bring up something that I think is a little bit of a challenge and we see in the church at times, and I just see in individuals. And I think it's this way in which sometimes the big events, the one-off serves are, I don't know, you might say sexier than the relational ministry, because, you know, it's high energy, it's quick and easy, you know, and in many ways, even the idea of the set line evangelism where I come and I just tell you, right? It's this like, how do we get the quick and easy thing? And yet relational ministry is messy and it is slow, and we don't always see the fruit right away from it. And I think that's sometimes why we can bend toward just that program based and that instead of that. And yet that is the reality of true impact and discipleship. It's not a fast process. And sometimes, yeah, God does do those instant like changes, but a lot of other times it's slow going and it is messy, but it is a beautiful thing. And it is a valuable thing that we would just invest in relationship with other people, that we would just love them well, no matter where they're all at on that spectrum. And yes, we are hoping we want to share with them about Jesus. We want them to come to know Jesus, right? But we're going to love them no matter what, right? And just help them experience.
The interesting thing is, Mark, we just started F3 last week, and the new member class has almost 20 people in it, right? And as I asked them at the beginning of the class, why are you here? Why do you want to join this church? I was really pleased to hear, and shocked in a way, I hate to admit that, but that many of them said, I want to be a part of this church because I see how much they care about this community and how much they want to impact this community. To me, that was like just a great message to hear, because that's what we've been trying to do, right? And I think that we see that there is fruit from actually showing how much we love 217 and care about this place. And more people, I think, as they see that, are going to be attracted to us, not because of anything tremendous other than the gospel of Jesus Christ that calls us to love those around us, right? And that's it. I think that's as simple as it is.
To your point, though, Mark, that it's a messy process. It is such a messy process. And I think about this, like, even as my role as pastor, as our role as leaders of the church, like, we are invited into the most celebratory times in people's lives, when they have a baby, when they're married, like, but we're also invited into the hard parts of life where we have to carry burdens. And I think I can speak for all of us to say, when I say that, we're honored to be able to do that, to be able to be and do life together. But that can be a messy thing sometimes. It can be a painful thing and a heavy thing. You know, when we're invited into the lives of our neighbors, man, the people around us go through stuff, and Jesus says, carry each other's burdens, right? And so this ministry that we're all called into, not just as pastors, not just as church leaders, but we're all called to carry each other's burdens. And that's a painful, messy, heavy thing.
I'm going to tack on to what you just said. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I think when you look for relationship, that's when you find out really where people are broken and hurt and struggling. Yeah. The easy thing is not to engage in people's lives, to just go and share the gospel and walk away. Okay, but that's not what we're called to do. You know, we are called to truly dig into what is it that people are hurting from, what is it that they are struggling from. And you only find that out when you build a relationship with people.
Yeah. And
it's then that we help carry that burden with them, right? So that's why I believe this relationship idea is so key, because you have to be able to build a relationship and trust so that people will share their burdens and share what they're struggling with and what their needs.
I think about Jesus with his 12 disciples and just this, like, even just doing life together for 3 years. There's got to be such joy as they travel down the road, as they laugh together, as they give each other trouble or whatever, you know. Sure, Jesus had the best jokes, best punchlines, but there's got to be such closeness and brotherhoodness there And, I'm certain that Jesus loved the 5,000 as he fed them. But there's a different kind of connection and closeness that those 12 guys have. And I would imagine that we all have the people that God has placed in our lives to have that kind of connection with, where we love. And it's an honor to be able to do that. And it's an exciting thing to be able to do that. It's not just a tough thing, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think to the point earlier, though, too, that you made, Morgan, is that this is the thing, though, about relational ministry is it's a lot slower. You're limited on how many people you can invest in, right? And so that's, I think, the reason we sometimes we shy away from it, because once again, there's so many people out there, right, that don't know Jesus. How can we get to them all? But I think you pointed at, this is why then we've been talking as pastors, why we've been in our messages preaching the importance of our people, you, God's people. You have this call. It's not just us as pastors. It's not just the staff. It's not just certain Christians, but each and every one of us are called to this, to be loving people well in our community, in the circles of people that we have, to be taking the opportunities or growing in the ways we can to be more confident in speaking about Jesus when we have those opportunities, to see the needs of the people around us and to be willing to take time out. And I know life is busy, but to take time out to show that value, right, to other people that God has for them. And when we are all doing that, right, that's where we see the multiplication of impact. And so relational, you need a lot more people engaged over a longer period of time. That's is what makes it harder, but it does make so much more of an impact in people's lives, right? It's been the times in my life where I've been connected in relationship with people who have been willing to walk with me through everyday life that I have experienced the most growth in my faith.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is true as we go out to this world.
Yeah, what I just see that's so beautiful is here we started this conversation thinking, like, let's talk about which one's better, just a one-off event or relational ministry. And I just love hearing, like, just the heart everyone has here at this table, that it is through first these moments, be that an event, be that a service, be that, a community invitation, to realize there is a group of people that authentically care, that are saying, Jesus cares for the sinner and how he went about it, and that we're reaching into that darkness and saying, hey, listen to this. This is the good news. This is the message of what Christ has done. And what's so amazing is that then when people realize there is an authenticity of caring and love in a community, they are then more willing to step outside of the society norm, which tells us, have everything put together, be all shiny and look aesthetically pleasing, like all of the quick videos we see, it is conditioning us to realize, at least I feel it's conditioning me to be like, don't share the mess, don't share what you're going through. And then when you see a counterculture church and group of people saying, actually, that's what we want. We want to do life together. We want, when in those dark moments, that you have someone to reach out to that is truly caring for you and loves you. I mean, that's exactly right. Like you were saying, Mark, walking with those, that's where lives are changed, because that's the hands and feet of Jesus. That's when, there is this shifting of, here I am isolated in the world that I've created and not letting anyone in, to here I am now, authentic, I'm real, I'm vulnerable unto the Lord, and he's using the gifts that I have to then benefit so many people. And so it almost becomes this circular thing again, where you have this event that allows for people to to be cared and loved for. They grow then in relational ministry, authentic, real. There's, true transformation, the work of the Lord. And then they're inviting others to say, come and look at this group that authentically loves and cares. And so what I think is really beautiful is that the heart here is exactly that with each event, be that a small group, be that a large community event, be that a church event, be that just regular weekly service, the heart is that we're here to meet with Jesus. We're here to have his words and be transformed by that. And I think that's where, again, that posture, there's fruit in that. His word does not return void. And so I think that's truly beautiful to see that.
So as we sit here having this great discussion, I guess my question becomes like, what do we do with this? Like, how do we start seeing the ministry that we do as a church differently through this conversation? And I think one is, for me, what I'm going to take away is that even the details and the tasks that we do for the big events, even those things should be directioned and purposed for, leveraged for building relationships to glorify God. That, there is no job on a Sunday morning that is unnecessary or small. That from the moment that people are opening the doors, they are leveraging relationships for Jesus and for his glory. People who are handing out bulletins, they are leveraging those relationships for Jesus. The people that are doing the screens or the sound or the cameras, like, how are we leveraging those things and those relationships that they're building for Jesus? And, my encouragement would be to those listening that you would take those things and you would experience what God has to offer you in serving one another in those relationships, that you look at those things as opportunities to glorify God and to build relationships for him.
I may summarize this because I agree with everything you just said, Bill, but I think one of the key things we could talk about as well is and understand is, I think Scripture is pretty clear that it's impossible to love without relationship. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so that's what the whole Love 217 movement that we've talked about and tried to create here with one of our core values that came out of this congregation, by the way, is that they love this 217, which is Decatur and all the surrounding communities, is that you have to have a relationship in order to love. And we have to understand that this Love 217 movement sort of came out of the time when I moved here, and people would say, "Where'd you come from?" And I'd go, "California." And they go, "Oh, I'm sorry." There's this idea as if we can't love this community, that this community is so broken that it doesn't deserve a good feeling. But I'll tell you, this is a great community with great people that is, to be honest with you, easy to love if you're willing to step out and get to know them and spend time with them. And to me, that is the goal, is for us as a congregation to step out and get to know this community, not be afraid of it, not to think of it as bad, but step into the brokenness, love them, because we need to build relationships with them.
Because Jesus loves them.
Because Jesus loves them. Exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, I especially agree with that. I mean, in the same sense that you were talking about, like, you came from California, you came from somewhere else, and every one of us on this podcast has come from somewhere else. There's a reason why God has brought all of us here, and for us to ever have in the mindset that we can disregard 217 or Decatur,
right,
it should never cross our minds, because God has called us here for a purpose. And I think that is definitely the one purpose that he calls all of us to, is to love.
And let me clarify one thing too, because I think there's a misunderstanding of what we mean when we say Love 217. It's not just that we do service to them. It's that we share the gospel with them. That's the ultimate goal. And so there tends to be people who think when we say Love 217 that means we just go and serve. Yes, we do go serve because we love 217. Every time we serve, The goal is to share the gospel, to show the gospel, to reflect Christ. And that is the ultimate reason. What we mean by love is that they would also understand the love of Jesus Christ, as we talk about all the time.
Right. Well, I think like you just said, one and the same gospel is love, and that it's sharing it with them. Well, I think that has been Lunchtime Live, our second episode. Yay. Like you said, we got through number 2. So again, we'll see you guys next week.